Welcome back to Simply Holistic. Dr. Tony here. Today I want to briefly touch on food coloring. Uh, I know that most of the mainstream media, well, not even just the media, but popular thought on such as Google University says that no matter the food coloring, no matter the dye, no matter what it is, it's bad for you. It's toxic. It's deadly even. And any of you that follow me to any extent know that I don't agree with all of the mass media. I don't agree with all of Google University. My question is, well, a couple of questions. Do we know where food coloring actually comes from? And I also will not, by default, across the board, say that food coloring, every food color is safe for everyone. Okay, so I won't say that, and I want to know, do you know where food coloring actually comes from? Why do I ask that question? Why do I make this statement? Okay, so let's come back over here. There is an excerpt from Wisconsin University, horticulture information article from Wisconsin Master Gardener website. So Wisconsin, well, as I said, university, a Wisconsin university, obviously. This particular one, I'm just using this as an example. This particular one is not meant to cover across the board all food coloring. This is one example that we then would apply to others. This one, annatto or achiote, or the scientific name Bixa orellano, is a shrub or small tree native to tropical parts of Central and Western South America. Now widely distributed throughout the tropics as an ornamental or for commercial seed production. This plant is the source, the annatto or achiote, this plant, which some people use as an ornament, and there's a picture of it on this article if you guys want to look it up, shows it growing as an ornamental in Costa Rica. So some people use this plant to grow on their fence or their vines as an ornament. This same plant is the source of the natural dye called annatto or annatto, however you want to say it, in English, from the Carib word for plant, achiote in Spanish, which comes from the Nahuatl. Okay, I'm not an expert on other languages, putting that out there. So in Spanish, which comes from another word for the shrub. And it's also another term in Portuguese, Brazil, for the Amazon region language. So this plant, the point of that is this plant is the source of this natural dye or food coloring. It's sometimes given the common name of lipstick tree. This woody plant that is one of 5 species in the only genus in the Bixicaceae family is hardy. It's plentiful in zones 10 through 12. Annatto comes from not the plant now, the food coloring, comes from the waxy covering on the plant's seeds. Now, this is not, okay. I know that when we buy stuff in the grocery store, there is a waxy covering. that's put there by man, because mankind sprays our crops down with stuff that leaves a waxy covering that's supposed to be a pesticide or whatever. This waxy covering, sorry y'all, this waxy covering is not from what man has flown a plane over and sprayed on, or driven a tractor through the field or whatever. This is not from what man has sprayed on, not the pesticide that man has. This is not that. If that was the case, then we have a lab-made pesticide that we are then turning around to use as a dye or as a food coloring. That wouldn't make sense. Okay, so annatto comes from the waxy covering on the plant seeds. So this is the natural, by nature, God created covering around this plant's seeds. This is the natural waxy covering, and that is what they take this dye from. So I'm still recovering from moving into this office, obviously. The carotenoid pigments, bixin and orbixin, are primarily responsible for the red-orange color. The carotenoid pigments in this natural waxy covering are responsible for this red-orange color. Indigenous peoples from Mexico to South America used past tense, so this underscores that this is not a modern pesticide that man is spraying on this waxy covering. This covering is the natural waxy covering that's been around on these seeds. Indigenous peoples from Mexico to South America used this waxy covering to make red body paint lipstick. So you've seen Indians, red body paint, lipstick. Oh, lipstick's not a modern invention? As well as using it as a spice in other, as well as using this, the annatto, as a spice in other plants for a variety of medicinal purposes. So, as a spice and for medicinal purposes. Annatto, wait, this is the waxy covering. Wait, this is a food dye. What? Dyes are toxic. See, that's what I said at the beginning. I don't agree with all that stuff. It's not a cross the board brush stroke. It's just not. Okay, let's go back to this. Use this as to make red body paint lipstick, and as a spice and for a variety of medicinal purposes. Annatto is also used in many traditional dishes from this area to provide both a yellow to reddish orange and subtle flavor, and is often used to color and flavor rice in place of the much more expensive saffron. Oh wait, saffron, that's natural too though. They use saffron to cover rice? They use annatto to cover rice? Food coloring. Saffron and annatto from plants? Food coloring? To color our food? It wasn't just done in a lab. Granted, these days it probably was done in a lab. It's not a lab made food coloring. Hold on. Before our modern labs, you realize this Mexico to South American indigenous peoples, this didn't happen in our modern labs. This was before our modern labs. They used saffron and annatto to color rice. Food coloring before our modern labs? What? This is not a broad brushstroke across the board for food dyes, despite what you read on Google. The Spanish and Latin American seasoning sazon is made from achiote seeds, cumin, coriander seeds, salt, and garlic powder. Why didn't I read any chemical names in there? Any lab, okay, not chemical names. Yeah, let me clarify that. We just did read chemical names. Believe it or not, we read chemical names. Those are all chemicals. Why didn't I read any lab made chemical names in there? The Spanish and Latin American seasoning sazon is made from achiote seeds, cumin, coriander seeds, salt, and garlic powder. Before synthetic dyes were available, annatto was used for coloring fabric and paints as well as foodstuffs. Before synthetic dyes, before our modern labs were available, annatto was used for coloring fabric and paints. Paint coloring from a plant, as well as foodstuffs. This natural dye. Okay, let me pause before this ends. Let me highlight something. You realize that these days any cloth coloring, any clothes coloring is considered toxic these days. Any food coloring is considered toxic these days. But before synthetic dyes were available, and I'm not saying that all these colors are not toxic these days. I'm not saying that all these colors are not toxic. Not saying that. Before synthetic dyes were available, plant coloring, bugs are used for this too. The shells of bugs, food coloring, used for this too. This coloring was used for coloring fabric and paints. You see that my office here is purple. Paints, as well as foodstuffs. Okay. Beyond that, this natural dye, both plants and bugs, by the way, are used for natural dye. But, Doc, I'm allergic to it, or I know someone that's allergic to it. And I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm submitting it's not the dye itself. Unless it's a synthetic dye that they're allergic to. Then it could be the dye itself. But if it's a natural dye and someone's allergic to it, I'm submitting to you it's not the dye itself. It's something else that's actually causing that allergy. Okay, moving on. This natural dye is one of the most important natural food grade colorings. And now we're going to get into a term here. Okay, skip the term. Still used in many commercial products, including this natural dye is one of the most important natural food grade colorings. It's from a plant, annatto. Still used in many commercial products, including butter, margarine, cheese, other dairy products, bakery items, salad dressings, snack foods, and chorizo, which I probably just butchered. Obviously something I don't eat. Now, the term that I skipped, I wanted to highlight that because this natural dye, again, still used in butter, margarine, cheese, other dairy products, bakery items, salad dressings, snack foods, and chorizo. Stuff that I'm sure every one of you eat. Because we just listed a variety of stuff that I'm sure every one of you eat. So you're ingesting this natural dye. Now, the term that I skipped, go back to the natural food grade colorings. In parentheses, it says FDA GRAS status. GRAS is generally recognized as safe. Okay. I have my own bone to pick about that. The FDA terminology. GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Okay, so again, not another sweeping across the board statement, not a sweeping statement, but from what I have currently seen, anything that the FDA calls GRAS, generally recognized as safe, is probably an ancient item that has always been safe. Probably. The FDA hasn't found a way to say it's not safe, so they generally recognize it as safe, GRAS, to say, well, we kind of have to give our approval, even though we don't want to give our approval, but, kind of have to because we can't find anything wrong with it. So they give this label to it. So when I see GRAS from the FDA, from everything I've seen so far, oh yeah, it's good. It's good. Don't worry about it. Because, mentally, we are supposed to say, wait, it's just generally recognized. Is it really safe? Because the FDA isn't actually approving it. That's what it boils down to. The FDA isn't actually approving it. They're just saying, I can't find anything wrong with it, so, okay, whatever. It's probably a natural product. One that they can't bomb. Which means, therefore, our bodies are good with it. Now, something the FDA actually approves, then we might have second thoughts about it. Yes, I'm biased. I know. But still, anything FDA approves, then I might go, what is that? They are giving their approval. What is that? What am I putting in? That's just me, though. So with this natural dye, the FDA generally recognizes it as safe. I guarantee you there will be instances where the same natural dye is found in some food material and they're going to say, that might be toxic because it's just generally recognized. Anyway, I should probably step back off that soapbox. Okay, moving past that, as I said, that status, grass status, ooh, I generally look at that as saying, oh yeah, it's good then. Okay, past that. Both oil and water soluble extracts are available commercially as an alternative to synthetic beta carotene. Well, check that out. Both oil and water soluble extracts, this natural dye, are available commercially as an alternative to. The synthetic should be the alternative to. This is available. This natural food dye is available commercially as an alternative to synthetic beta carotene. So, since it's available as an alternative to, I would steer away from the synthetic and just use the natural. Granted, yes, I'm sure it's going to be more expensive because it's natural and they can get away with doing that, but it is used in the cosmetic industry to a much lesser degree. The main commercial producing countries are Brazil, Peru, and Kenya, with the latter two the main exporters to the U.S. and Europe, respectively. Okay, so used in the cosmetic industry, with, in that case, the coloring in those cosmetics, the coloring would not be toxic because this is a natural dye. So the coloring in those particular cosmetics, this red orange, or even yellow, if it is from this natural dye, then that's not going to be toxic. Okay, moving on. The broadleaf evergreen plant grows 20 to 30 feet tall under ideal conditions, generally multi-trunked with branches are greenish and scaly when young and ringed at the nodes. The simple leaves tells you what to look for. Plants bear terminal clusters, branched panicles, 8 to 50. Each fragrant 2-inch flower generally has 5 large petals. They're arranged in clusters. Requires a frost-free, warm, humid climate, a sunny location, well-drained soil. Few nurseries in the Midwest offer this species, but they're available from some commercial growers in Florida, and seeds are frequently offered for sale online from individuals or companies. Okay, so again, this is a natural food dye. This is why I'm going to talk about this today, because I do not personally see all food dyes or cloth coloring, but let's stick with the food dyes. I don't see all food dyes as being toxic by nature. Oh, look out for this color. If it is a lab-made chemical, yes, I give it to you. It's going to be toxic. But that's not just with food dyes. It is not just with food dyes. That's with any lab-made chemical that's in any food that you ingest. The lab-made chemical portion of that food product is going to be toxic to one degree or another. To some degree, that lab-made chemical is going to be toxic to your body. Now, granted, some of you have immune systems that are so well built and fine-tuned that it takes all those toxins and just deals with it, and you don't ever notice a difference. You don't feel a thing because your immune system is that well adjusted, and your body can handle that. For some of you, the immune system is not in that state, and you take a food dye in, and you're gonna notice it. Any lab-made chemical, whether it is a food dye or another chemical in the food, is going to be toxic at some level. Any natural food dyes, on the other hand, the natural food dye itself is not going to be toxic. If you have an allergic reaction to it, there's some other reason. Not saying that food dye didn't trigger something, but it's going to trigger the same process in you that it triggers in somebody else who's not allergic, because it's a natural food dye going in. It's a natural chemical going in. So it's going to be digested the same within you as it's digested within somebody that's not allergic to it. It's digested the same. It's processed the same, But somewhere in that process, something within your body responds differently, and therefore you have the allergic reaction. So I submit that it is not actually the natural food dye. The lab made, yes. The natural, no. So then we need to discover, is what you're ingesting a lab-made food dye, or is it a natural food dye and your body's responding to something else that's not actually the food dye, but something in the process past the digestion of the food dye? I hope that's making sense. So I don't see food dyes as a broad brushstroke to be toxic. I don't even see an individual food dye, because I know there are a couple of them that it's just popular to say, oh, this dye, this coloring, stay away from it no matter who you are, no matter what. Especially if you got a certain health condition, stay away from this food dye. If it is a natural dye, I don't agree with that. Not a broad brush stroke for every single person. I promise you, it just ain't gonna work that way. It just ain't. Everybody's body is different. It doesn't mean that food dye, that natural food dye, is toxic to you or everyone else. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's body will respond differently. It comes down to your hormonal balances and your toxic load. Really, it comes down to those two things. If there is an allergy to a natural food dye, I want to look at your hormone balances and I want to look at your current toxic load in your body. Looking at those two things is going to tell me a great deal about why your body's responding the way that it is responding. Then we can treat your body for whatever it is going on inside your body. So keep this in mind when it comes to food colorings. Natural dyes. With that said, find me at justsimplyholistic.com. Download our intake papers. Either email them back to me or drop them off here at the office up front. Drop them off up front, and I can get a hold of the papers. Let me review them. Book your appointment. Come in here. Let's go over your intake papers face to face. Go through our initial gamut of testing. Let's see if you have some kind of food dye reaction. Let's see what's going on with your body. Let's see what the reaction is actually from so that we can treat that reaction. So get yourself into our Simply Holistic office here in House Springs. Let's see where you are and what's going on with you. Let us help you. We look forward to seeing and serving you soon.